about satellite operations. So Ron, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. And it's just great to be able to talk about satellites here. And before we get started, I'd just like to thank my friends Mitch and Paul and RJ, Mitch 80HJ, Paul KE0PBR, and RJ WY7AA. And I think just the fact that they're here is just such an illustration of what a close-knit, supportive community the AMSAT community is. And we have a lot of fun together on the air, and we support each other, and it's just nice to see they're there. And so, there's so much to cover in satellites. And so Mitch and Paul and RJ have volunteered to be on the chat window tonight. So if I gloss over something, or I go really fast, or if I, say something too quickly about Twitter or web pages or AMSite, just go in the chat window and say, "Hey, Mitch, what did Ron mean by ABC?" And they'll be able to answer you right away, no problem. Okay, so please just make use of that. They're really friendly. Mitch, Paul, and RJ, they'll be glad to help out tonight during the presentation. In a lot of ways, satellite operators, it's a nice little sort of kind of like a grassroots group almost within the community. And there's a lot of sort of innovative awards and operating awards that are different and specific to satellites. And I mean, I'd really be remiss if I didn't mention this. So Mitch and I, so my call sign is AD0DX and Mitch is AD0HJ. And a couple of years ago, actually, I think it was during Walmart. Was it during Walmart parking lots in the air, Mitch? Or Paul, do you remember? I think it was, wasn't it, that Ruth, we were on the same path with Ruth. I think it was during Walmart parking lots in the air, which is another sort of grassroots AMSAT, well, not AMSAT, grassroots operating event, right? And basically, Mitch and I both worked Ruth, KM4LAO, on the same pass. And Ruth said, "Hey, I worked AD0HJ and I worked AD0DX. I should get an award for that." And so other people said the same thing. And so Mitch and I talked, and I mean, Mitch lives in Minnesota. I'd never actually met Mitch, but we talked on Twitter or something like that. And we said, yeah, that'd be a fun thing to do. So this is the AD0 squared card that Mitch designed and made up. We did it together. And on the back is the QSL information, and it has the location where Mitch and I were located when the QSL was made. So far, I think we've sent out 225 of these, and we have keychains too. I should have brought those over, and we just had 10X buttons made up. And I think now we're probably, what, Mitch, about 50 behind? Because Mitch has been roving, I've been roving. I think we're 40 behind before the last trip, Mitch's trip to North Dakota, and my last trip to Santa Fe this weekend. So we need to stop it, and we need to get working on filling out these QSL cards. So just all that to say, thanks for being there tonight, Mitch, and answering questions on the chat window. And have to mention Paul, because Paul makes out the best. Paul has the most AD0 squared awards. So there's kind of this nice sense of like competitive fun nature among satellite operators. And Paul, because Paul lives close to Mitch, he's always in the footprint, basically. If you're going to be able to work Mitch and myself, Paul and Mitch are both in Minnesota, so Paul's always in the footprint. And I think he's number one, and I think RJ's number two, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So really, if you have any questions tonight as I'm talking, anything at all, put them in the chat window. Paul, Mitch, and RJ can get those answered. And just really glad you guys are all here. And it's a lot of fun. So, I mean, just since I showed that QSL card, QSL cards are alive and well in the satellite community. And there's, people go to a lot of work to make up custom QSL cards. So it's still kind of an old-fashioned tradition almost that the QSL card is the, the final, what do they say? It's the final end of a good QSO or something like that. So these guys are all pretty active. So Paul provided a slide deck tonight, a PowerPoint deck, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But just before that, I thought I would just share an audio clip of a trip I made last year. And to do that, I kind of need to just introduce really fast the Gridmaster. Is everyone here familiar with Gridmaster on 6 meters to work the 488 grid squares? Just raise your hand if you've heard of Gridmaster before for 6 meters. Some have, some haven't. Paul has, good to know. Okay, most people have not. All right, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to share my computer sound. I'm going to share my whole desktop, so I'm going to switch back and forth between different things. So, I mean, satellite, there's not much we can talk about, but satellite operators love to operate, which maybe is a simple thing to say, but this is the map of Maidenhead grid squares of the USA. And so there are Maidenhead grid squares all over the world, but these are the Maidenhead grid squares for the USA. And there's 488 of these grid squares. And basically, I mean, like any ham radio, operator, you make up like challenge awards, right, for yourself. So in HF, right, I mean, work to all states is sort of the first operating award you go for. That's very common. And satellite operators too will also get work to all states. Now, if you're on the East Coast, it's a challenge to get Hawaii. I'm not sure exactly where that line is, but here in Colorado, getting work to all states is pretty straightforward. Hawaii is the biggest challenge just because there's not many regular operators there, I don't think. I mean, I've only worked people there that have been visiting from the mainland. So of the 488 grid squares, I mean, so there's certain grid squares that are more challenging than others. And so I've been very fortunate, very blessed to be able to go on a satellite de-expedition last September 22nd to what's considered to be the most challenging grid square to get to, mainly because it's the only landmass is San Clemente Island, which is a US naval base. And my screen's going kind of slow here. Here we go. So, this grid square right here, DM02, is one of the most difficult grid squares to get to because it's part of the 488. So the committee that decided, which of the grid squares to included this because there is a US land in the grid square, but it's San Clemente Island. And it's all, it's a US naval base, you can't get on it. So myself and my friend Alex, N7AGF, who I hadn't met Alex before this, we chartered a boat, which was crowdfunded through the AMSAT community. It was $2,500, totally crowdfunded through the AMSAT community, and generous people like Mitch and RJ and Paul contributed to that. And so last September 22nd at 11 o'clock at night, I was right here, right in this little zone right here at 11 o'clock at night, crossing over into DM02. And I'm just going to play a little snippet from that first pass. And it was pretty exciting to be able to be on that boat and do this in the dark, in the bow of the boat, going up and down. And I'll just play a little snippet here for you. So I should have mentioned we had a special, we had a 1x1 call sign for the trip. It was N60 stroke, they were Maritime Mobile, so N60 Maritime Mobile. And that's Patrick, WD9EWK. He's really active in satellites, and he's in Phoenix. And kind of one of the jokes we have is that, DM43 is, everyone has DM43 because those guys are really active. So that was Patrick, one of the first contacts. Patrick, 73. Delta Mike 97. N60MM, N6UTC. AA6 SIP, Delta Mike 97. Whiskey, Turner, Guiza, Kilo Foxtrot, Third Romeo. N60, Foxtrot 7 Romeo, November 6 Ocean, Maritime Mobile, Delta Mike 02. N60, N7JY, Delta Mike 03. N7JY, N60 Maritime Mobile, Delta Mike 02.
SIP, K86 SIP, November 6 Ocean Maritime Mobile, DM02. And 6, Oscar Mobile, Maritime Mobile, Whiskey 7, Juliet Sierra Delta. Whiskey 7, Juliet Sierra Delta. November 6 Ocean Maritime Mobile, Delta Mike 02. OMM, N6UTC, Delta Mike 03. N6UTC, N6 Ocean Maritime Mobile, Delta Mike 02. Next door, Delta Mike 03, good luck.
Yeah, so that's just a little snippet, and I've got a few more recordings lined up for tonight. That last guy, that was N6UTC NDAF, he's in Long Beach. So that fading you can hear is typical of a satellite pass. I mean, the satellites do tumble in space, so the antenna is not always oriented quite correctly. Yeah, that's a typical pass. Any questions at this point from anyone?
No questions, but that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, well, you're welcome. So just while we're talking about rare grid squares, I'm going to talk about one more grid square that's probably the other most challenging grid square to activate that I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to go to, is this grid square right here. It's Charlie Mike 79. So basically the DM02 trip was a pretty good success. And then I've been told that the CM79 grid was also a challenge. You can see it's all in water except for this little tiny little corner is on land. And apparently, well, so now I've been there and I activated it. But the challenge here is that the land is on the west side of a ridge. And so when you go there, you know, you're like 70 feet below this ridge. And so part of the challenge here is to make CM79 available for people on the East Coast, because, you know, it's very difficult because things have to line up just perfectly. So, I mean, I'm going to use Paul's slide deck here in a minute, but I've got another recording I was going to play real briefly. But just to kind of paint the picture here, most of the satellites we have access to are 300 miles up above the Earth. And there's two exceptions now. At this time, when I did this trip, the only exception was AO7, which I think is it's 900 miles up. So basically, to reach the East Coast from this location, because it's on the west side of a ridge, you basically have to work it when AO7 is only one choice. AO7 is essentially almost overhead, because if it's like low on the horizon because of that ridge, then you won't be able to reach that satellite. And so I basically planned my whole trip so that I would be at this location where this longitude and latitude cross, because these Maidenhead grid squares are all based on longitude and latitude. So I'd be there I forget now, Monday or a Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when AO7 was going to be overhead. And I mean, I actually had cell phone coverage. So I actually had RJ and Paul and Mitch on a private Twitter chat, kind of, able to ask questions, keeping me sane. I actually did bring enough water, so I was a little stressed out during the trip. But it worked out really good. So satellite operators are enthusiastic. I mean, a little competitive, a little enthusiastic. And so part of the challenge here is that if I just waited to make the contact on AO7 to get the East Coast, I'd have all the people on the West Coast, all the people in the central US, and all the people on the East Coast. And the people on the West Coast would be louder. And so people on the East Coast wouldn't have a chance. So the recording I've got lined up for here is AO91, which was one of the satellites that's only 300 miles up, FM satellite, and it was over the Pacific Ocean. So the idea is that I wanted to pick up the people on the West Coast first, and up to Wyoming as well, and just to kind of clear them out, if you will, if I can say it like that. And then I did an SO50 pass that Paul helped me tee up, and then the AO7 pass was last. So I hiked in 3 miles and 800 feet elevation gain, and for 3 passes. And this was the first pass. Let me just find this here, 19-107-28. And so at this pass 2, like, so I'm actually on the grid corner. So I'm actually giving out CM79, CM89, CN70, CN80. So you can see here, I'm actually standing exactly where this longitude and latitude cross, and I have my GPS there and take pictures as proof sort of thing. So I'm standing right there. So everyone that contacts me gets 4 grids for this Gridmaster Award, which is pretty cool. I mean, it really is cool. So let me see here. I was going to zoom. So I've basically previewed these recordings because
Ron Bondy, AD0DX. Today is, what is today? Today is,
this is kind of my own personal monologue. So when I go to record it,
Monday, October the 7th,
where I'm
apparently.
at.
Monday, October the 7th. And I
AD0DX, corner QSL. AD0DX, out of Charlie Mike 99, QSL. Whiskey 6 Sierra Uniform November, KB6L2Y.
Okay, that's Christy, KB6LTY. She's in Apple Valley, California. She's on all the time. Everybody knows Christy. And she's not on Twitter. I need to find out how many grid squares she needs, but Christy's a really active member of the AMSAT satellite community.
Whiskey 6, this is KN6EAA out of Charlie Mike 99.
Well, I found out.
AD0DX, corner.
Oh, I want to see this phone.
AD0DX from KYSH, Delta Mike 43. Delta Mike 43 again. 208 Yankee, Sierra Echo, stroke 7.
Okay.
AD0DX, 7080. QSL. AD0DX, November 7, Echo Golf Yankee, November 7, Echo Golf Yankee, AD0DX, corner QSL. QSL, thanks for the contact.
So the way the FCC, not the FCC rules, but the way the rules work for a valid satellite contact is you have to give one piece of information. So it's too much of a tongue twister to say all 4 grids and every single contact. Usually I just say at the start of the pass and then, you know, every couple of minutes, and I just say corner. And people follow AMSAT, or AMSAT people are, people tend to be pretty active on Twitter. And so everybody knows where I'm at, and they're all queued up. So when I say corner, they know what the grid squares are and what, you know, where I'm at.
Thanks for rolling. AD0DX, N7AGF. November 7, Alpha Golf Fox. Hey, Alex, AD0DX, grid corner, QSL. QSL, Ron, thanks a lot.
So that's Alex N7AGF. He's the other ham I went with on the trip to DM02. So it's just nice to be able to give him a grid square too. He lives north of Seattle.
AD0DX, Kilo India 7 Uniform X-Ray Tango, Delta November 17. KI7UXT, AD0DX, grid corner, QSL, Cal. QSL, Ron, thanks for the new ones.
So that's Cal. He's KI7UXT. He's up in Spokane, Washington. He's really active too, and a really good guy.
Great.
Whoops.
Thank you, 73. AD0DX, WY7AA, DN71. WY7AA, RJ, AD0DX, Charlie Mike 7989, DN7080. Great work, Tron. Thanks. Whiskey 6, Sierra Uniform November.
And that was RJ, who's on the meeting tonight. Just happened to find him on the recording there. So RJ's a big rover, and RJ and I have a little, like I said, we're competitive. RJ and I have a little friendly competition going here. So this is the Gridmaster map for the 488 grids. So anyone can download this. If you want, you can put on the chat window where it's at. Mitch, Paul can tell you. And so this shows my grid. So the green grids are the green squares are the grids that I've worked from home here in Colorado Springs, right? So we live here in Delta Mike 78. Where to go? Delta Mike 78. Monument might be, I'm pretty sure Delta Mike 79 is Monument, the dividing lines, right? I think it's near the Bass Pro north of Colorado Springs. And then the red dot squares are the ones that I've rove to. So I've been in each of these squares with the red dots, and I've made satellite contacts from there, and I've got 116, and I think that's what RJ has as well. So just a little friendly competition there, and it makes it fun. Any questions about any of this so far? All right, nothing heard, but please, if you have questions, please feel free to speak up or just go in the chat window. Mitch, Paul, RJ can answer any questions you guys have. They'll be glad to help out. So Paul was kind enough to provide this slide deck here. And I just put my name on the front page here, just if anyone on the club wants to email me. There's my contact information. So please email me. If anybody would like to do a demo or see a demo, or if you've got 2 HTs and an aero antenna and you'd like to try satellites, ping me. I'm working at home. We can do an evening meetup. It'd be great to have a time to get together. I'd be glad to show you a satellite pass. And LD had a friend come over a few weeks ago in LD, and we did a pass with him, and he got his first contact. So that was kind of cool. Yeah, and their satellites are over, like, there's probably like 10 to 15 satellites we can use. So they're over, 2 or 3 times, well, 4 or 5 times a day, lots of opportunities. So this slide deck was actually made up by Paul, who's on the call right now. Hi, Paul. And Mitch, also AD0HJ, Paul KE0PBR. And they made this up, and I just borrowed it. I didn't change anything. So yeah, they can certainly answer all your questions. So what can you do on satellites? Well, you can do APERS. You can exchange text messages. They have SSTV. They have special events with the space station. They send pictures to commemorate special events. CW beacons. You can decode beacons and telemetry. If you like digital, there's digital data being sent out by the satellites that the satellite owners are glad to receive, and that have, voltages, temperatures, that sort of thing. It's very valuable. You can actually listen to the ISS as they talk to classrooms. That's kind of cool. And then there's 2 kinds of satellites, essentially. There's what we call the linear satellites. So they're linear transponders. So they have a passband. So basically these satellites handle or allow more than 1 person at a time. And then the FM satellites are FM, and they're single frequency, single user satellites. So only 1 person can be on at a time. Only 1 person can get through. And the biggest signal gets through, which is good and bad. And I think both examples I showed there were on FM satellites, not on linear satellites. If there's enough interest, I'd be glad to come back in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months and do a linear satellite demonstration, or to talk about linear transponder satellites. They are different, a little more challenging, but certainly very doable. Mitch, Paul, RJ, myself, we all do them. Roving, portable with all manual Doppler control. So it's certainly very possible to do. So I'm not in the right kind of mode here, am I? So what are satellites? Well, it's just like a land-based repeater, except they're going around the world at 17,000 miles per hour, which is pretty cool. They're at the same elevation pretty much as the International Space Station. It's about 300 miles up. If they're at the horizon, they can be up to 1,400 miles away, which is pretty cool to think with 5 watts and a little antenna, you can actually talk to a satellite that far away. It's really impressive. Low power return, 250, 500 milliwatts. You have to account for the Doppler shift, which we'll talk about here in a minute. You transmit and receive on different bands, and my understanding is that just minimizes the interference, right? Because as you're receiving, you're transmitting, so having them be, usually you transmit on 435 and receive on 145 megahertz, up on 70 centimeters, down on 2-meter band, and having the frequencies be so far apart just reduces interference, makes the satellite transponder transceiver design simpler, than reduces interference. At least that's my understanding. So it's pretty cool, right? That you can do this with 5 watts, make a 5,000 kilometer round trip using a 2-pound box, approximately 4 inches square in outer space, to repeat the signal to you on a different band. And for me, one of the coolest things for me still in satellites is when you're setting up for a pass and you point your antenna at the, at the point in the horizon where the satellite's going to appear, and you hear static, 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 and then all of a sudden you hear it quieting. You hear that FM quieting from the satellite. It gets quiet, and then you hear Doug or Mitch or RJ or Paul. It really is a cool experience. So these are satellites, or low Earth orbit satellites, LEO satellites. If you're familiar with like satellites like for dish TV, that kind of thing, geostationary satellites, those satellites are 22,500 miles above the Earth, and these little guys are 300 miles above the Earth. And they're basically 4-inch cubes, 10-centimeter cubes that are really tiny. Often they're sponsored by universities where they're doing an experiment, and they let us provide the radio communications aspect of it. And sometimes they're just totally designed and built by amateur radio operators. So there's lots of different options here. These are really popular ones. SO50 is a Saudi Arabian satellite. AO91, 92 are built by AMSAT. PL101 is from the Philippines, I'm pretty sure. And Lilac Sat, I'm not sure. I think it's all digital. I haven't used that one. Okay, at this point, we'd switch over and we just watch a satellite demo video here that Mitch told me about. No, where did we go here? So thanks, Mitch. So there's a guy, John Breyer, KG4. A couple years ago, he made up these videos to promote satellites, and they're very instructional. John's a great guy, very knowledgeable, and they're on YouTube and they're all free. So his channel is called Space Comms. Space Comms right here. If you subscribe or you want to go back and look at that, you can just watch these videos. So this is him doing a pass, and he makes 18 QSOs in one pass. And I don't know, Mitch has done, I think, 30 QSOs when he's roving, that kind of thing. I mean, 18 is good, but Mitch has a whole lot more. Mitch basically just roved on 2 weeks of his vacation, separate weeks, pretty much all of North Dakota. Because of these grid squares, right? After a while, it's not the ones that are far away, it's more about the population density. And there's not a lot of ham radio satellite operators in North Dakota, obviously. And so Mitch actually just got back from last Wednesday to Sunday. I think he had like 400 contacts, and he activated 10 grid squares here in North Dakota, just really putting North Dakota on the map. And Mitch is basically Mr. North Dakota now.
Yeah, I like to think that probably your best satellite action is not the popular places. It's the not popular places, gravel roads, dirt roads, middle of North Dakota, South Dakota. You would be, Mr. Popularity and help people out a lot. So yeah. It's kind of boring out there, but that's the fun part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to give you an idea, this is Mitch last week, parked on a grid line somewhere in North Dakota, racking up those QSOs, EN 17, EN 18. Yeah, exactly what Mitch said. It's the remote places that get you all the passes. And so what Mitch does is, and Mitch really sets a pretty high bar here, he when he goes on his trips, he posts where he's going to be, each satellite is going to be on, and the times. And then on the linear satellites, he gives his frequencies. And then when the pass is done, he listens to the recording right away, makes a notepad of it, and then he takes a picture and puts it on Twitter. So that way, people that are following Mitch or that work Mitch, they know they're in the log basically, which is nice because let's say Mitch is going to be like on a rare grid line for 4 passes. You know, if somebody works him on the first pass, but maybe it's a bit of a fade, maybe it's a little scratchy, maybe somebody stomps on you, you know, maybe someone stomps on Mitch's reply, you're not 100% sure. If you go here, you know, oh no, Mitch heard me, I'm in the log. So then you don't need to call him back.
That's exactly it, Ron. Yep.
Yeah, it frees up the satellite for other people because when you're roving, you really want to give out the grid square to as many people as possible. Yeah. So I don't do this. I just do the recording when I get home. So I was in Santa Fe last weekend doing recordings, doing satellite passes, and I still need to do this. I need to do better and do what Mitch is doing here. People would probably appreciate that because it really is helpful. But yeah, and then here's Mitch with his Garmin. See you can't really see it that well here, but all the zeros on the display. And then just, so Twitter, if you're a serious satellite operator, Twitter is how you communicate. And we have some fun with some GIFs there. That's all Paul's fault, of course. He's the GIF commander. So here was Mitch in Rugby, North Dakota, geographical center of the North America. So that's kind of cool. My Twitter thing just moves up so fast. I want to show you this one that Mitch did. So this is how organized Mitch is. He shows you on the pass band where you're going to be at also. So it's just really, really helpful. All right, let's go over to John. John. So I won't play the whole video, but this will just give you an idea of the pass and what it sounds like and kind of give the flow. And then what's good to watch too is just, I'll do it at different points of the video. You can see how John is changing where he points his antenna throughout the pass.
Thank
I want you to do this long enough. That was Kilo 9, Uniform Oscar. Any of us that have been on the satellites for a while, I mean, to some degree, you just hear the first couple letters of his call sign. He has a real distinctive voice, and you know who it is. And so a lot of us try and learn people's names just to make it a little more personable and friendly. And so that's Bob, Kilo 9, Uniforms Oscar.
Hotel 6, Echo, Tango, Foxtrot. Hotel Papa 2, Victor X-ray.
So that Hotel Papa 2, Victor X-ray, he's in Panama.
November 3, Juliet, November X-ray, Fox, November 11. November 3, Juliet, November X-ray, Kilo Golf 4, Alpha Kilo Victor. KK4HOR, Echo Lima 96. KG4, Alpha Kilo November 3, Juliet, November X-ray, Victor Echo 3, Charlie Whiskey Uniform, Fox November 03. November 3 station, this is Kilo Golf 4, Alpha Kilo Victor. Go ahead with your grid. Fox Mike 05. Roger, roger, copy, Fox November. KG4AKV, W5, Papa, Fox Golf. W5, PFG, believe you're sounding good here at the Raleigh airfield. Great to hear that, John. You got it. November 3, Juliet, November X-ray from Victor Echo 3, Charlie Whiskey Uniform, Fox November 03. Yeah, KG4AKV, W5, PFG, QSL, John, great signal to Texas. Thanks a lot. KJ4AKV, Whiskey Hotel 6. Good copy. This is KJ4HOR, Echo Lima 96. Do you copy? A Whiskey Hotel 6 station, KG4AKV.
We're gonna zoom ahead here, and so you see how John has the antenna here. Go to the middle of the pass. Wow, he really changed it there, didn't he?
Fox November 35. KG4AKV, kilowatt 9, kilowatt Foxtrot X-ray, Echo November 61. Kilowatt 9, kilowatt Foxtrot X-ray, sounding good to Hamfest, KG4AKV, Fox Mike 05. 73, John, thanks. Good night. KG4A, K, I believe it is AB10C, Fox Nancy 42. I need your grid. 7-3, John, thanks. 9.
So if you notice, one of the things John's doing here is he's got his back to us, but he's rotating the antenna left and right. It's because the antennas on the satellite, they're rotating as the satellite tumbles through space. So my understanding is that the solar panels on the satellite are asymmetric, and they do that so it heats up differently on each face, and that helps it or encourages it to tumble in space. And they do that on purpose so that they won't have one side that's exposed to the sun all the time and overheat. So you can see he's turning his wrist if you look carefully, and that's very intentional.
KG4A, K, I believe it is AB10C, Fox Nancy 42. I need your grid.
AB10C, KG4A, KV, Fox Mike 05.
Roger, AKV, Fox Mike 05. Thanks and good luck.
November 3.
It's definitely the
All right, so I think we'll stop there. Any questions about that? Questions, comments, keep going. We'll keep going. So thanks to Paul and Mitch, Paul, for this satellite presentation. So basically, if you want to operate satellites, you have to find the satellite. And so I use GoSat Watch on my iPhone. So basically, you have to know the compass heading where the satellite's going to, come up over the horizon, and then you have to know the compass heading where the satellite's going to go down
Hey, Ron.
Yes.
Hey, Ron. Can you stop the video? I can't hear you over that for some reason.
I did stop it. It's still playing.
Okay. Sorry, my mistake.
Is it okay?
Yep, we're good. Sorry about that.
No problem. Yeah. So these apps tell you the compass heading you can see here where the satellite appears, where it disappears, and where it's going to be at the closest approach point. So this pass and this green line you can see here is basically an overhead pass, and it's south to north. So most of the satellites are in what we call polar orbits. They're either south to north on one rotation of the Earth, half rotation, and then north to south on the other. And then there's some satellites that go east to west, like the CAS-4A, 4B satellites that are really nice. So there's apps on your phone, on your PC, Android, that show you this information, and that's how we all do it when you're out in the middle of nowhere. This is GoSat Watch. This is the one I use. Whoops. Oh, okay. Boom. So on the left here, it's showing you all the passes. So the satellite names like SO50, AO91, all the satellite names, and you can go to amsat.org and look those satellite names up. And then this shows you the pass. So this is AO85, which doesn't work anymore. It had a hearing problem, and I think people blasted it out of the sky, unfortunately. But you can see here it was starting in the northwest, going to the southeast, and peaking in the northeast at about 45 degrees. So overhead is 90, right? The horizon is 0, and this will be about 45 degrees. And that'll be a nice pass. I mean, 45 degrees is very easy to hit. And then this is another nice feature of GoSat Watch. It actually, you can see the footprint of the satellite. So this is SO50 down here. That's a Saudi Arabian satellite going 16,800 miles an hour. And this shows you that it's 418 miles up and it's 800 miles away from your current location. And, it's going to be a nice high pass for sure. So you can see you've got basically all coverage on the whole US right there on that satellite pass. And the satellite's passes last about 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes for most of the satellites. AO7 is up higher, so it lasts about can last 20 minutes. And there's a new satellite, RS-44, that's a Russian satellite that also is in a very high orbit. But a little problem with that satellite, apparently the booster rocket didn't detach from the satellite, so it's tumbling in space really fast. And so that means it has a lot of deep fades. But Paul, who I'll show Paul's Gridmaster map here, Paul, KE0PBR, he needed DM66 in northern New Mexico, and I got him that grid square on Sunday morning at 7 a.m. on RS-44. And it was fun. It was a challenge. And then this shows the satellite path. So the dotted lines are where it's been, right? And this shows the current location and the current angle, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, when I'm out roving, I don't look at all these numbers. I just look at the compass heading, where it's going to start, where it's going to end, the highest point. And basically, once you have the satellite, you just keep it peaked up based on, you know, pointing at it and listening to it. Sometimes you lose it and you have to look at your phone again to see if you lose it, which is certainly possible. And that does happen too. But once you have the satellite and knowing the path and the trajectory, you're really just trying to keep it peaked up by ear and by the satellite position of your antenna. Okay, so satellites have Doppler shift, right? Because basically because the satellites are going so fast, and Doppler shift is a function of frequency. So Doppler shift is noticeable at 450, 435 megahertz, 70 centimeter band, not so noticeable on 2 meters. So we tend to ignore it on 2 meters. And so, right, so you have to have full duplex radio so you can hear yourself. And that's one of the things I want to say tonight is I really encourage people that want to get started in satellite, please use 2 HTs. You can do it with just 1 HT, but you're probably going to cause interference. I really recommend you use 2 HTs so you can hear yourself clearly. Okay, so Doppler shift, I mean, if you think about the train whistle story, you probably heard in like high school physics that as the train is coming toward you, the pitch of the whistle increases. Then as the train goes away from you, pitch of the whistle decreases. And the same effects happen with radio waves. But the amount of the Doppler shift is a function of the frequency. So it's really only noticeable at UHF at the 435 megahertz band. So if you have an HT, then we tend to adjust the Doppler in 5 kilohertz increments, and that's fine because you're working FM. Your FM radios have this thing called the capture effect, so it adjusts for it automatically anyway within that 5 or 10 kilohertz range. So once you get the hang of it, it's pretty straightforward, but it is something you have to do because you have to adjust for the Doppler shift on your radio. You also have to point your antenna at the satellite as it's going across the sky, and then you have to remember your own call sign too. So, and the call sign of people that you're talking to. So if you want to get started in satellites, I recommend you just listen first to like 10 passes and learn some call signs and kind of get a feel for what the flow of a pass is and sort of learn some of the etiquette. Now this shows how the Doppler shift changes, but I just checked with Doug or with Paul, sorry, before the meeting, and yeah, there's just a little typo here on this is AO92 because the center frequency is 435, 350. You actually start out at your radio, you start out at a lower frequency because the satellite's coming towards you, and so because of the Doppler shift, it experiences a higher frequency. So you actually, in terms of your radio, you start at a lower frequency at AOS. At TCA, the time of closest approach, it's at the center frequency, and at LOS, it'll be up at 360. So I think this is backwards, but it shows the effect of the Doppler shift there. Then Paul, KE0PBR, has made up this cheat sheet, and it's on his blog. And so you can see right here, he's gone through, this is really great. Paul's really done a big service to the ham community. We can look at this AO92 because it's the newest satellite that works the best. If you want to start with satellites, I recommend AO92. And so at AOS, you start at 340, halfway to the midpoint, 345. At the center point, you're going to be transmitting at 350, and then halfway through the rest of the pass, 355, and then LOS 360. I think that's all we'll say about that because I want to say a few more things. So I mentioned about polarization with the video from John. You have to keep your squelch open when you're doing satellites, and reception is really important. Just like most things, even HF, right? Reception is the important thing. So I've actually got some aero antennas here I was going to demo in my kitchen here. And you can get radios that are full duplex, the D72. I'm assuming, okay, yeah, the D72. I don't know about this Kenwood and the other one. It's common to get two FT817s or FT818s, or use two Baofangs, right? Or you can use an SDR, or people get the ICOM 910 or the 9700 or the new software-defined radio that everybody likes. We all use voice recorders because during the past, you know, you got all those call signs, you can't remember them. And this is Doug, N6UA, and he's doing a pass, and it's an FM pass. But if you look closely at this picture, what do you notice? Doug seems to have 4 hands.
Yep.
So we all love this picture because sometimes when you're operating, it seems like, yeah, one more hand would be kind of handy because you have to, you know, point the antenna, hold the radio, change the Doppler, record the stations, you know, all that stuff's going on. So this is just kind of a humorous picture, but we all love it. So, like I said, to get started, you have to know where the satellite's going to appear on the compass, how high it's going to be, pre-program your frequencies, get your voice recorder going. People tend to talk quickly on satellites. Get your antenna. And I've forgotten this too, Paul. And point the satellite where it'll appear. So like I said, one of the coolest things is you point your satellite at the horizon, you point your antenna at the horizon, and you hear static, 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 and then you hear the FM quieting, and then you got to pass. And it's just the coolest thing. Listen for the quiet, listen, listen, listen. And then find a call and call them. So one of the things with satellites is we really discourage people from just putting their call sign out in the satellite hoping someone calls them, because it's sort of disruptive. So here we're saying, you know, this is the right thing to do. 80HJ, this is KE0PBR, right? So find someone and call them. 80HJ from KE0PBR. I'm in EN34, right? So here, this could be an actual satellite QSO is WY7A8, KE0PBR, EN26. And so that's Paul calling RJ. Then RJ is going to say KE0PBR, WY7A8, DN71. RJ's in Cheyenne. And then Paul answers as WY7A8, QSL 73. This is kind of formal here. He'd probably say, thanks, RJ, have a great day, something like that. And then RJ would just respond with QSL kind of thing. But the conversations tend to be short and snappy. I put people's names in there. Like if you heard, I've got another recording from Mitch. He's at the grid line. And I tend to say people's names just to make it a little more personal. But you're really not asking about anything. You know, you're really making it fast because satellite passes are 10 minutes. So we're very conscious it's a shared resource. And we want to give as many people as possible the chance to make the contact. Oh, that's what I just said. Who made these slides? These are great slides, right? So the pass is 8 to 10 minutes long. So do not call CQ or whistle. And I'm not kidding. We've all heard whistlers, people just whistling in to see if they can hear themselves, kind of kerchunking the repeater. It's really frustrating. Please don't do that. Don't need to call CQ satellite. If you need to listen and make sure you can hear people, or set up a SCED with someone. You know, I'll be glad to do that. If you want to get on, I'll be glad to work you. Or you can come and we can stand like 10 feet apart and work each other. I'd be glad to do that for anyone. It's always fun. How's the time doing? It's 8:30. Yeah, that's kind of all the stuff I just said.
N6UA, November 0, Juliet Echo. November 0, Juliet Echo. N6UA, Delta November 60, Jerry. Delta, GN86, thanks to another grid. No. 6UA, Kilo 6, Foxtrot Whiskey. 6 Foxtrot Whiskey, November 6, Uniform Alpha, Delta November 60. QSL to GN60, Delta Mike 14, thank you, Doug. No. 6UA, VE6WK. 6WK, N6UA, good afternoon, Bill, Delta November 60.
Okay, we're going to stop that there because I want to show you my antennas. And so rovers are people that go out and activate grid squares, and Mitch does that a lot, and people appreciate that. We use THEWHERE, which is iPhone app that has your grid square in the picture. We use the Maidenhead program, which shows your Maidenhead locator. So you can put that on Twitter to kind of show where you're at. They have lots of awards, and these slides are going to be available on the W0TLM website. We have events, Walmart parking lots in the air is coming up, ham badges. So there's kind of just this fun spirit to satellite operators. We kind of make fun of each other if we mess up or make common mistakes, you know, or find ourselves in awkward situations. Like, so this guy, I think Casey made this up, KI7UNJ badges. So I've done this, drive off forgetting gear. Like, I've left my $50 voice recorder on the bumper of my Ford Ranger as I left the spot. So I get this badge, you know. And here's Mitch and Paul having a party on the air, you know, that kind of thing. So it's just a lot of fun. AMSAT.org is a great website, and there's a nice AMSAT Getting Started book. If you're interested, you can email me, and I'll give you the link to that, but it's really excellent, very good book. I would encourage you to join AMSAT if you'd like to. A great organization that works a lot to promote amateur radio and try and launch satellites. And they have a great website. So amsat.org is a great getting started area there. So this is Paul's list, but I think I've done all these things too. And one of the nice things about the AMSAT community is we kind of laugh at each other and at ourselves, right, for the silly things we do in a nice way, right? Because we've all, if you do this enough, I mean, if you've activated, you know, a couple hundred satellite passes, Paul has probably done 800 satellite passes. Hey, you run out the door, grab your gear, and you forget something. You hook your cables up backwards, something like that. It happens to all of us, and we just kind of enjoy that and move on. All right, any questions at this point?
Fabulous presentation. Thank you.
Okay, how much, are we out of time? I did want to show my gear. We have a few more minutes to show some of the gear, or does everybody have to go?
I tell you, sure, you've got time.
We got time?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so so this is my Arrow antenna, and what's different about it is, hopefully you can see there. So there's a guy, Mike, W0TLM, who's in Michigan, and so this is informally called a lid stick because he drilled holes in the standard boom from Arrow, right? So that's your standard Arrow boom, and he's the first one to do this, to drill these holes in it. And so we got a guy in our group that does this for people as a gesture of kindness to help them out, the rovers, a lot. And tell you, it makes the antenna a lot lighter, which is really nice, especially like in those AO7 passes that go like 20 minutes. It's really nice. So this is my extra Arrow antenna that I take roving, so that if something breaks, then I've got that. And then I was recently gifted this Arrow antenna, which is it's a carbon fiber boom. So it's kind of cool. It's really light. It was made by Ken, DE3HLS. He's in Thailand, but he's Canadian, and he can't operate, so he's just doing this to keep active. And yeah, so it's a really nice antenna. So I'm gonna get one more antenna. So I feel kind of guilty. I have like 3 antennas here, right? So this one is the Alaskan Arrow, and it's only 2/3 of the antenna. I don't know if how well you can see it, but it's longer than the standard one, and it's still got another probably 12 inches missing. And so the original idea was that it was called the Alaskan because it's going to have more gain, and it's so it's sort of made for people in Alaska that want to work people in the mainland. But the problem is that it's heavier, And so again, we have a friend in our community that drilled the holes in the boom, which is a really, really nice gesture. And he did that for me, and I really appreciate that. And I use that out roving as well. So, I mean, you can do satellites with just 2 HTs, and I've done that. I've made probably 100 contacts with just my VX6R and my FT70, just 2 HTs. And then you need cables. When you rove, one of the fears is these cables are going to break, right? So let's say you're like on a boat in the ocean, your cable breaks, you know, that's bad. So anyway, so Mitch, 80HGA, was kind enough to make this up for me. It's a really nice cable, LMR, you know, 420, 240 UF. It's a high quality cable, double shielding. One thing I found is that operating here, I had no problems. But then when I went on the boat, I actually had some interference. I think because of the moisture that the other cables I had. And so Mitch made this up. So thanks, Mitch. I use this this week. I use them all the time. I have 2 sets of these now. It's a big help. So you can use 2 HTs, but I've kind of changed over to using the Amazon camera bag. So inside the bag, I have 2 CFT818. So I have 2 of these. And because the satellites are full duplex, but full duplex radios are expensive. And so these FT818s are, you know, single duplex, I guess. You know, they only transmit or receive. And so you have 2, one for transmit, one for receive. And then the other thing I have, which is nice, is a lot of the satellite operators use these Biano batteries. And these are lithium polymer batteries that are really well made. And let me just get this out here. Sorry, I should have prepared better for this part of the presentation. But while I'm doing that, other thing I was supposed to mention is that we have an AMSAT Twitter net every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. and it's on DMR. We have a DMR AMSAT channel 98006. We're on the Yaesu reflector, and Mitch can give you that in the chat window. And then just this week, we found out that Walt W5KH in Houston, he's going to have a D-Star bridge also. So we have a lot of fun, you know, because on the satellites, you can really only talk, you know, you can't talk that long, right? The lighting's not very good here, is it? Just a second. The satellites, you can't talk that long. A pass is 10 minutes, and the QSOs are pretty snappy. So Mitch and Paul initiated this DMR net, so we can just talk to each other a little bit, you know, at least for a few minutes, kind of have a roundtable thing and talk about AMSAT happenings. And a lot of rover announcements are made on the AMSAT Twitter net. That's every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. Mountain Time. If you'd like to join in, please do. It's a lot of fun. Here you go. So this is the Biano battery. If you've never seen these, this is 9 amp hours, and I use this battery. I mean, you could use this for a week of satellite passes. It wouldn't run out of power. They're really, really nice. So, and then these also are big enough or small enough where they can actually fly also, like in your carry-on in an airplane. And I've probably done that 7, 8 times now, and I've never had a question or never had a problem.
How's that Biano spelled?
It's Bioenno. Bioenno. Hey, Mitch, can you put that in the chat window there, Mitch? This is not the smallest one, but it's the one I use. But some of the guys have bigger ones as well. I know some of the soda guys use them too. Let's see, what else we got here? I made some notes. Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much the end of the presentation. I mean, we want to talk a little bit about Walmart parking lots in the air. So I mean, this is another one of these grassroots things that was sponsored by or spearheaded by Adam K0FFY in Iowa. One of our guys, Chris, was from Phoenix. He was visiting West Virginia, and he happened to work a grid line on satellites from a Walmart parking lot. And like all these things start, someone said, hey, that'd be a fun contest if we all went and worked from Walmart parking lots for a day. And so Adam organized it, and it's been going on for 2 or 3 years now, and probably happen again this year as well. I hope so anyway. So it's just a fun time to go out and make a lot of contacts and use your gear and get on the air sort of thing. All right. I think that's all I've got pretty much, unless you had any other questions or anything. Did I miss
Ron, thanks a
anything?
lot.
Paul, Mitch, RJ, anything you guys want to add?
No, I think you covered it, Ron. I think you did really good. A lot of good, valuable information there. If anyone has any questions, don't be afraid to reach out to Ron, myself, RJ, or Mitch. We're all QRZ, our email addresses are all good. Or get on Twitter, like Ron said, very active community.
Oh yeah.
Reach out to any one of us. There's a whole group of people out there that can help you.
So
Yeah.
Ron, quick question. What power are you using for your 818s when you transmit?
Usually like 5 watts.
Okay.
But
so
on
you're-
the Cast 4A 4 birds, I use 1 watt typically.
Okay,
because
so
you
way
think-
down. You're not
Yes.
using a lot. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess one more thing I didn't show that I could show that's interesting is, so Paul has done this heat map of grid squares for, there it is. Come on back. There we go. So Paul's done a heat map of grid squares showing, I think he has like 90 people that have submitted data, and it shows of those 90 people, it shows how many, which people have which grid square, right? So like I was kind of trying to make a little joke there. The DM43 here is Phoenix. So of the 90 people that submitted their data to Paul, 97% have DM43. Those guys are always on the air. And so currently the most needed grid square is Delta Lima 88, which is in Big Bend National Park. And actually Doug, N6UA, and myself are planning a trip there. And we went in March, but then we got rained out. And then we wanted to go back, and then the virus hit. And now Big Bend National Park is open, but only in the front country. So we're batting around different options. We may go July 4th and do an overnight operation, because to get here, you have to go 30 miles on a backcountry dirt road to get to the grid square, just because of the location of it, because most of it's in Mexico, and Mexico doesn't allow ham radio operators that are not Mexican to operate from there. So I can just find it here really fast. There we go. If I can zoom in here. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, so I've researched this a bunch, and Doug, N6UA, we're going to do it together. DL, right, drag it over. Here it is, DL88 right there. So you can see that it's just this lower section here of Big Bend National Park in Southwest Texas. And you have to go to this location. It's a 30-mile trip on backcountry roads. And so there's a lot of interest in going there. I kind of mentioned that Twitter is a popular tool for a lot of people that are active in the AMSAT community. And let's just pop over to Paul for a second. This is Paul's grid. So Paul, man, how long have you been chasing grids for, Paul?
I've been on satellites now for, it'll be 2.5 years right now, but I moved my QTH, so I had to start all over pretty much about 18 months ago.
Wow, so 18 months you've done all this?
I got to carry over about 30 grids from my old QTH, because you have to be within a 50-mile radius of it.
Right.
So I was able to move. Luckily, I got some of the rare grids that were able to move over, but it's people like you, Ron, that got me a lot of these rare grids and all the action that you've done that really made that sheet as green as it is. I'd love
Well,
to take
it's
credit
fun.
for it, but it's you.
Well, it's a team effort, right? I mean, lots of people contribute, right? But just to show you that, so Paul has 467 of the 488 grids for the Gridmaster Award, and he needs DL88. So that just shows how seldom people go there, and how needed it is. And if for some reason Maine just has a low representation. It's hard to get people in Maine for some reason. This EM19 is Topeka, Kansas. We got a guy there. DM17 is in the desert in Nevada. You know, these these far West Coast ones are just low population density, right? This is like Montana, I think. So Paul's 467. Hopefully he'll be done in a few months, and looking forward to getting him DL88. There's a guy, George, N3GS in Topeka, and he needs 2 grids. It's DL88 and FN45 up here in Maine. And so looking forward to getting those for him. So yeah, anyway, it's a fun group. Trying to think what else I could show or share here. But here's Paul. So this is Theodolite. So I'm pretty sure this is Paul's home grid, EN34, Jordan, Minnesota. And this is how rovers prove or show where they're at when they're out roving.
What was that again, Ron? What is that called?
That's called a Theodolite. So it's an app on the iPhone, and so I just changed over here to my Twitter page. And so here, this is my wife and I were driving back from Santa Fe, New Mexico on a Sunday, and this is so beautiful. I just stopped at the side of the road and took this picture. So the cool thing is at the top, it shows the 4-digit Maidenhead grid square locator. And so rovers will often use this just to kind of broadcast or advertise where they're at, and so people know what grid square they're in. So it's called Theodolite, and there's one similar one called DOPPLER for Androids. Theodolite's only for iPhones.
Thanks.
Yep.
Well, Ron, thanks a lot. We appreciate. I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else did. We will put your slides up and a recording of the presentation up, so it'll be available for members and non-members alike to listen to and page through the slide deck.